Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, kind of distill them down and pull out those crucial nuggets of knowledge, basically giving you a shortcut to being really well informed.
Hmm.
Today we're diving into some excerpts from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, the really impactful one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. An easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones?
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack how these seemingly tiny, consistent improvements can actually lead to pretty remarkable results.
Right.
It demonstrates this powerful idea, that massive success doesn't always need massive action. It feels counterintuitive sometimes.
It really does. And what's so fascinating here, I think, is that Clear doesn't just talk theory.
No.
He uses this incredibly personal, really compelling story of transformation. It's not just like an introduction to the book.
Right.
It really underpins his whole philosophy.
Yeah, that's true. He actually lived it.
He did. It's authentic.
Okay, so let's unpack that story a bit. Clear kicks off Atomic Habits with this really raw account of a traumatic injury he had in high school.
The baseball bat incident.
Yeah, hit right in the face.
Yeah.
Got a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, seizures even. It was bad enough they put him in a medically induced coma.
Just awful to think about. And the recovery wasn't quick either.
No, not at all. Long, painful months of rehab. Lots of setbacks. He even mentions getting cut from the high school baseball team, which must have been tough.
Devastating for a young athlete, but that period, that really challenging time, that seems to be where the seeds of his ideas were sown.
Exactly. It became this, crucible for his insights.
Right, because it was through that really tough step-by-step recovery that he started piecing his life back together, and crucially, not with some grand gesture,
No.
but with one tiny, deliberate behavior change after another. So by the time he got to college, he was consciously, building these small habits, almost unnoticeable things sometimes.
Like what sort of things are we talking about?
Well, things like making sure he got enough sleep, keeping his study area really organized, consistently getting his exercise in. Very small, manageable things.
Okay.
And this brings up a really important question, I think, for us and for you listening. How did these seemingly minor changes, how did they actually manage to add up and, transform his whole trajectory?
Yeah, and it is remarkable when you look at how they accumulated. The sources show these small habits, they didn't just nudge him along,
No.
academically, physically, mentally.
Yeah.
They eventually led to him becoming an all-conference athlete and the top student at his university.
It's an incredible transformation from that injury.
Totally.
Eh?
In his own experience, that journey, it basically became the raw material for his work. He built this huge online following, and then eventually this book came out of it.
Right.
So, okay, beyond his amazing personal story,
Mm-hmm.
how does this translate into something universal? Strategies that, you could actually use?
Well, this really gets to Clear's central argument, doesn't it? That those tiny improvements, if you make them consistently, day after day, they really can lead to remarkable, almost exponential results.
Exponential, right.
Yeah.
He uses that compound interest analogy.
Exactly. The compound interest for behavior. It's such a powerful way to think about it.
It really is. Explain that a bit more.
Sure. Think about saving money. A tiny interest rate doesn't look like much day to day.
Right.
But over decades, it grows into something substantial, right? Compound growth. Clear says the same thing happens with habits. A tiny improvement, maybe just like 1 minute of practice on a skill or drinking 1 extra glass of water.
Okay.
It doesn't just add up linearly like 1 + 1 + 1. It compounds, it builds on itself. So
Yeah.
over time, you see this exponential growth in your skills or your health or whatever it is you're working on.
That makes so much sense.
Right.
Because we often look for that big bang, don't we?
We do. The massive change, the sudden shift.
Yeah, the New Year's resolution sort of thing. But Clear seems to argue those big jumps, they're just rarely sustainable.
Exactly. They often fizzle out.
So what makes these tiny atomic changes, as he calls them,
Yeah.
what makes them stick? Like from a behavioral science angle.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's where the book gets really practical. He argues these tiny steps work because, well, first, they're sustainable. They're not intimidating.
Easier to start.
Much easier to start. And crucially, maybe the most important part, they gradually reshape your identity.
Your identity.
And-
How so?
Well, you're not just doing something like reading 1 page. You start to become the kind of person who reads. You're not just meditating for a minute. You're becoming a meditator.
Ah, I see. So it's shifting from focusing just on the outcome?
Right, outcome-based habits to
Hmm.
focusing on the person you want to become. Identity-based habits, that's the game changer.
That feels more powerful somehow.
It is. It's about building systems, not just chasing goals. And the book is really set up like an operating manual. It blends the science, psychology, neuroscience with really practical steps
Yeah.
to help you, the listener, form good habits, break the bad ones, and yeah, ultimately fulfill your own potential. Often you might not even notice the huge shift until you look back over time.
So here's something to think about then. What tiny, consistent action could you start today?
Mm-hmm.
Something small that compound interest might just quietly but powerfully lead to a remarkably different future for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really profound thought to mull over. Actually, that idea of consistency over intensity.
Indeed. Because the biggest transformations, the most profound ones,
Yeah.
they rarely start with a giant leap. More often, it's just a series of almost invisible but absolutely consistent steps forward.
We all chase those big breakthroughs, don't we? The sudden promotion, the overnight success story everyone talks about, the dramatic transformation. But what if the path to really massive life-altering results? What if it lives hidden in something far smaller, almost imperceptible? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're trying to unravel the surprising power of what are called atomic habits. It's a term that kind of hints at something incredibly small, right? But also foundational, powerful, like atoms themselves. We're drawing insights from some really groundbreaking sources, like James Clear's Atomic Habits and also the unseen power of tiny habits. Our mission really is to show you how these tiny, seemingly insignificant changes, well, they don't just add up, they actually compound, and how they can fundamentally transform your life. We want to show you not just what they are, but how they work, and maybe most importantly, why they're such a huge leverage point for change. So let's dig in. Okay, so when we talk about, radical transformation coming from tiny changes, it probably helps to start with a real story. And James Clear, the author who really put Atomic Habits on the map, he actually opens his book with this really personal, very raw story about a high school injury. Yeah, it was pretty tragic. He was playing baseball. A bat accidentally hit him in the face, led to a broken nose, skull fractures, seizures, even a coma. Just awful. And the recovery was, as you can imagine, arduous, painful, months of rehab. And for him, being a dedicated athlete, the worst part was getting cut from his high school baseball team. That was the ultimate blow. But what's remarkable, really, is how he turned it all around. He eventually became an all-conference athlete in college, top student. And that wasn't because of some single heroic act. He literally pieced his life back together one tiny behavior change at a time. That's his phrase. So in college, he deliberately started small, consistent habits. Things like sleeping early, staying organized with assignments, exercising regularly, even making his bed. And these weren't just random actions. They were these small, incremental adjustments that started to build on each other. They accumulated. They sort of gently, almost invisibly nudged him along, academically, physically, mentally. And it led to this truly remarkable transformation.
And what's genuinely fascinating about Clear's own story is how perfectly it captures this broader principle, right? That massive success rarely requires massive action. It's usually something far more subtle, more consistent. It's this idea that tiny improvements, when you make them consistently day after day, they can lead to exponential results over time. It's not linear. Think of it like compound interest for behavior. Just like a small amount of money invested can grow into a fortune over decades. These tiny daily habits repeated again and again, they don't just add up, they multiply. And this isn't just like a theory for individuals either. We've seen it play out on a huge scale. Almost unbelievable, really. Take the transformation of British cycling. For nearly a century, they were. Well, frankly, they weren't very good. A dismal track record. Then, in 2003, their new performance director, Dave Brailsford, came in, and he totally revolutionized things with this approach he called the aggregation of marginal gains. His whole philosophy was pretty simple. If you improve every single thing related to cycling by just 1%, those small gains will compound into something really significant. And he meant everything. I mean, they meticulously looked at adjusting bike saddles, trying new massage gels, even improving the athlete's sleep with better pillows. They even painted the inside of the team's band white so they could spot tiny dust particles easier and keep everything spotless.
Wow, that's incredible. Literally every single detail.
Yeah.
So what happened? What was the result of all these, seemingly tiny 1% improvements?
The result was, well, nothing short of miraculous, honestly. Within just a few years, British cyclists went from decades of mediocrity to suddenly winning gold medals consistently at the Olympics and dominating the Tour de France multiple times. It's just a powerful example of how small, consistent tweaks applied across a whole system can lead to huge success. It wasn't one big invention or a sudden superstar appearing. It was just the quiet, persistent accumulation of those marginal gains.
That's a perfect segue, actually, because this is where it gets really interesting. It touches on this common human tendency. I think a lot of us will recognize this. We as humans, we tend to overestimate the significance of one dramatic moment, right? That big win. And at the same time, we underestimate the cumulative impact of small changes. We're just wired for instant gratification, aren't we? We want results now. Get rich quick, lose weight overnight, learn a skill instantly. But habits, well, they just don't work that way. If you try to get just 1% better every single day, honestly, you won't see much difference at first. For days, maybe weeks, it feels like nothing is changing at all. And it's so easy to get discouraged then. But as the sources really emphasize, after a while, that small, almost invisible daily win, it truly compounds into something large. It's like this secret, powerful force just working quietly in the background.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes really clear that this compounding effect, it isn't just about good habits leading to growth. It goes both ways. Just like good habits multiply and lead to amazing progress, the bad ones, no matter how small they seem individually, they can quietly destroy our lives.
Think about it. Missing one workout. Okay, probably not a big deal, right? But consistently missing workouts, that becomes a habit. And that habit erodes your fitness, your energy, your well-being over time.
Right, or like having one burger isn't the end of the world.
Exactly. But eating fast food every day, that definitely has long-term health consequences that compound. They build up. It's about noticing these tiny, seemingly insignificant actions because they are, whether we like it or not, actively shaping your future, brick by brick, or maybe atom by atom.
That's so true. It's really easy to just dismiss one small negative choice. Oh, it's just this once. But when you multiply it,
All right.
days, weeks, years. Precisely. There's this powerful analogy Clear uses about an airplane leaving Los Angeles heading for New York. If its course is changed by just a few degrees, a tiny, tiny shift right at the start, it won't end up in New York anymore. It'll land in Washington, D.C. That small, almost invisible change in direction today can lead you to a completely different destination years down the road. Your results in life right now. They are basically lagging indicators of your past habits. Think about it. Your current wealth. That's a product of your money habits over time. Your health. Product of your eating and exercise habits. Your knowledge. Result of your reading and learning habits. What you do day in, day out fundamentally determines the outcomes you get tomorrow, next month, next year. So if you want to know where you'll be in the future, just look at the trajectory your current habits are setting for you. It's stark, maybe, but also kind of empowering when you think about it.
Yeah, that airplane analogy really hits home. It definitely makes you stop and think about those small daily choices. But okay, if these tiny shifts are so powerful, why do so many of us still give up? Give up on new habits before we see results? Even when we feel like we're doing everything right, there's this deep frustration, isn't there, with that invisible progress.
That's exactly the challenge. And it brings us to a really crucial concept James Clear talks about called the plateau of latent potential. Imagine an ice cube in a really cold room. Let's say the temperature slowly rises, maybe from 25 degrees Fahrenheit up to 31 degrees. You're doing everything right, you're adding heat, but the ice cube, it just stays solid. No visible change. It feels like your effort is wasted. But then, bang, at 32 degrees, it starts to melt. That one final degree made the visible difference. But, and this is key, the preceding 6 degrees were equally vital. They were building the potential for that breakthrough. Improvement often happens very gradually, almost invisibly under the surface, but we see an abrupt, visible breakthrough. You can't see any difference at the beginning, Clear writes, but that doesn't imply that your work is futile. It is accumulating.
Okay. So we're essentially waiting for that melting point, that 32-degree moment. And sometimes that wait feels really long, and that's where our brain just kind of rebels against it.
Exactly right. And this raises that important question. Why do so many people quit right there on that plateau of latent potential? It's precisely because they look at the lack of visible results and think, this isn't working. My effort is pointless. Our brains often crave that immediate feedback loop, clear cause and effect. The plateau messes with that bias, but actually success is often hidden right in that moment of frustration. It's during that phase when it looks like nothing's happening that the work you're putting in is actually gathering momentum. building silently. And then at some point, it just bursts forth at the surface. That's the breakthrough moment everyone sees. But it only happens because of all that consistent, often unrewarded effort that came before. So getting past it requires patience, yes, but also maybe shifting how we define success. It's not just about the outcome, but maybe satisfaction in the process itself. Success really lies in sticking with it, embracing that patience, persisting through that unseen accumulation phase. When you start to identify as the type of person who does the habit, rather than just focusing on the goal, showing up daily becomes easier, regardless of whether you see results yet.
That idea of shifting from outcome to identity. Yeah. Yeah, that feels incredibly powerful. So what does all this mean for how we should, actively approach change and improvement in our own lives? It seems to point directly to this key distinction Claire makes. Are you systems-oriented or goal-oriented? Goals are what you want, right? I want to lose 10 kilograms, or I want to be rich. Systems, though, are the processes that actually lead to those things, like consistently eating well, preparing healthy meals, regularly saving money, practicing writing every day. It sounds subtle, but the sources make it really clear it's a profoundly different way to think about transformation.
Oh, it's absolutely profound. And it's one of the most critical takeaways from this whole deep dive, I think. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Winners and losers will frequently have the same goals. Think about it. Every athlete wants to win the championship, right? Every startup wants to be profitable. Every aspiring writer wants to get published. The difference isn't the goal. The distinguishing factor is that the winners usually have more effective systems in place to actually get there. Focusing too much on goals, which is what most of us do, actually has, according to Clear, four pretty big issues. First, like we just said, goals aren't the only thing that matters because winners and losers often share them. Second, goals often only lead to short-term change. You might achieve the goal of cleaning a messy room for guests, right? But if you don't change the system or habits that made it messy in the first place, it's just going to get messy again pretty quickly. The goal was met, but the problem wasn't solved. Third, and this is a big one for happiness, goals can postpone happiness. We fall into that trap of thinking, I'll be happy when I achieve X, delaying satisfaction until some future point.
The I'll be happy when trap. Yeah, I know that one.
Exactly. And fourth, goals can create this frustrating yo-yo cycle with habits. Like, people train super hard for a marathon, they achieve the goal, cross the finish line, and then they stop training. Why? Because the goal was the race, not the system of being a consistent runner.
Okay, so that goal-oriented approach sounds like it almost sets us up for these bursts of effort followed by, well, falling back, which explains a lot of the frustration people feel. How do we make that shift then to that more enduring system-focused mindset?
Well, Clear really pushes us to focus on the system, the daily process itself, because systems are what endure. You don't have to wait to hit some big goal to feel successful or even just to enjoy the process. If your system is solid, the outcomes tend to happen more naturally, almost like a side effect. A writer doesn't wait until they're published to be a writer. Writing daily, showing up, that is the system that reinforces the identity. And a huge part of building these robust systems comes down to understanding what he calls the 4 laws of behavior change. These are like practical levers you can pull to make good habits stick and help break the bad ones.
The 4 laws. Okay, that sounds like the practical roadmap we need. Can you walk us through those?
Absolutely. So the first law is make it obvious. This is all about designing your environment. If you want to practice guitar more, don't hide it in the closet. Leave it out in a stand where you constantly see it. Want to eat healthier? Put fruit on the counter. Hide the junk food. Make the cue for the good habit impossible to miss. Second law, make it attractive. You need to make the habit appealing. Maybe pair something you need to do with something you want to do, like only listen to your favorite podcast while you're doing chores or only watch that addictive TV show while you're on the exercise bike. Bundle the temptation.
Okay, obvious and attractive. Makes sense.
Third law, make it easy. This is huge. Reduce the friction. Lower the barrier to entry. Want to go to the gym in the morning? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Want to drink more water? Keep a full bottle right next to you all day. Make it so easy you barely have to think about it. And finally, the fourth law, make it satisfying. This is crucial because our brains love immediate rewards. Find a way to give yourself some immediate reinforcement for doing the good habit, even something small, like tracking your habit on a calendar and enjoying seeing the streak grow, or maybe a small, healthy reward right after you finish. Immediate satisfaction locks in the behavior.
Those 4 laws make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Yeah, that really does give you a clear framework, a way to actually build the system that supports where you want to go instead of just staring at the destination. It almost feels like you're, I don't know, engineering your environment and your routines for success.
That's exactly what it is. It's behavior design. And this is also where that term atomic in atomic habits really comes into its own with its dual meaning. Yes, it means small like an atom, yet incredibly strong when combined, the building blocks. But maybe more importantly, atomic habits aren't just small things you do in isolation. They are fundamental parts of an environment, part of a larger system. They are the tiny compounding elements of your daily life. And it's these environments, these systems built using those four laws that ultimately bring about success. They are the small, systematic bricks that, layer by layer, build something monumental and lasting.
So really what we've kind of uncovered today points to this, well, almost revolutionary idea. It challenges that deep-seated desire we have for instant results, for dramatic shifts. Success, it seems, isn't really about those huge, monumental changes we dream about. It's much more about the cumulative, quiet, potent power of small, consistent, everyday habits. It's really a testament to the fact that real, enduring change doesn't happen overnight. It happens through this patient, consistent, purposeful process, building robust systems, applying these atomic principles day by day.
Indeed. It really forces us to reconsider how we approach, well, pretty much all aspects of our lives. So maybe a good question to leave everyone with is this. If you were to really look at your current habits, the things you're doing automatically, day in and day out, and project them forward, like that airplane we talked about, where would you honestly land in, say, 5 or 10 years? And maybe more importantly, what tiny, almost imperceptible shift using maybe one of those four laws could you make today to start gently altering that trajectory for your future?
That's a really powerful question to sit with. Hopefully this deep dive is giving you, our listener, a new lens to look through, a new way to see your own potential for transformation. Maybe start by identifying just one small atomic habit and the system around it in your life. See where it takes you. Until next time, keep digging deeper.